now is we have a bunch of entrepreneurs and predators on our coast. You deal with it as a political issue, and you also deal with it as a legal, technical issue, which we could sit here and listen to this pitch, and then the next week we'll have another outfit come in with another pitch. We'll have another government agency come in with another pitch, and in the process things get muddied, and we have become, in a sense, enablers or facilitators of this process. The old line, or just say no, might be something we need to start thinking of resurrecting to be used in this particular situation. But quite frankly, I find the whole technology, and I'll show my ignorance here, I find the whole technology rather boring and not at all something that I would invest a penny in based on what I see and compare it to wind energy and solar energy in the way of solar panels. We have those technologies. They have not somehow or other captured the enthusiasm of the country in general. That's our fault, perhaps. But why should we be entertaining yet another scheme that is being brought, which says this might only hurt a little bit, it might only damage a few whales, this might only change the ecosystem just this much or that much. But this is something here that really to call upon the 5 supervisors and staff to come forward and listen to an idea, a scheme that is being facilitated on the other side by FERC and in all likelihood the Department of Energy. Just, I find it quite offensive, and that's, I guess, you're getting a sense of that right now. But I find it quite offensive that I should be wasting my time addressing this. I'll address the political issues on this the same way I did 20 years ago with regard to offshore oil. We can address the political issues. We can address the technological issues. But let's not get in a situation, fellow supervisors, of entertaining every guy who comes down the road that wants to sell you some snake oil. It's not our job.
Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My understanding is that PG&E, because they are a permit holder, is required to roll out this information. It isn't that we're entertaining it from anyone else because there are no other permit holders. So my suggestion is that we absolutely have to look at this on every front, but I think we're entitled to information until they don't have a permit. My sense about it is we ought to see what that permit entails, what they're thinking, what they're planning on, because they do hold a permit. Now, until they don't hold a permit, that's the only reason I think that we're considering it. We're not considering hearing from anyone else on it, just the fact that they have a permit and it's required under the permit. So they need to be held accountable for what the permit that they filed for and they still have today requires. And so that's the only reason that the city has asked and the county has asked that they roll this out. I think it's an opportunity for the public to ask questions of them, and it's an opportunity to see what they're proposing and what they're required to do it. So I think that we ought to hold them to that.
Before I close this item, I totally agree with my colleague. We took on this issue of a monitoring situation, not as a promotional activity of the Board of Supervisors. I need to reiterate that, okay? We are doing what you asked us to do, and that is stay involved, help develop any regulation or moratorium, whatever it is, but if we don't continue to be engaged, then we will be swept over. So just a reminder, we are staying engaged because this is the right thing to do. So I look forward to the presentation on the 15th for that issue alone, to stay engaged, to stay on top of things, to work out the outcome, not to promote. So just to reiterate that. Any additional, Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the record, I'd like to state the board has an extensive reading file that has been passed here, and probably other things will continue to be added to that reading file. There isn't time. One constituent asked to have something read into the record, or maybe more than one constituent did. We don't have the time to do that, but the board does have all input. It is very carefully noted, and it is in a file that will be circulated here. And some of it is very detailed legal filings, and the board has that for review. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor, for making that distinction. I'll close this item, and we're going to take a 7 to 10 minute break before we continue items before us.
Okay, but an update, it's not required at all, right? We want to change.
We're back from our recess, and 2 items. There's been no supporting reports submitted. One is legislative and the other one is CEO office. Do we have anything from those 2?
The legislative report is being compiled to go to committee for recommendations. We've got a large number of bills that seems like they're coming out every day this time of year. I just got probably another 10 or 12 today from RCRC. Those are presently being evaluated, and we will be taking it to General Government Committee for recommendations, take it back to the board. And the only comment on the CEO's report, we had previously mentioned to the board that on the 21st we were originally scheduled to do a workshop on ambulance and fire districts, and we're postponing that to a future date. We are putting together a working committee. I will be doing the ambulance portion along with HHSA, and Allison will be handling the fire district issues. So we're going to split off into 2 different committees and attempt to pull that project together before we present it to your board.
Thank you, Tom. Let's see. Let's move to the last big discussion item of the day, and that's discussion possible action regarding approaches to updating the LCP, the Local Coastal Plan, and dealing with applications for local coastal plan amendments prior to adoption of the LCP update. To the CEO's office.
Thank you. Allison Glassy, Assistant CEO, and this is a follow-up to a planning team report that was given to the board on March 18th. There were some questions about the information or the topic of the local coastal plan update, and we indicated that we'd come back at this meeting, particularly because it was on the coast, but there may be additional discussion and information that needs to occur even after this particular meeting. So, in terms of the local coastal plan discussion here, there are 2 aspects to today's item. One is preparation for an approach to updating the local coastal plan, and the second is consideration of the current practice of not processing local coastal plan amendments that increase density. And those 2 topics have kind of gotten intertwined, but they are 2 separate topics, although they do relate to each other. So first, focusing on the discussion of the local coastal plan update. That was on the original work plan for the planning team, and it indicated that we would start looking at this issue in 2008. So we're doing so, and that's why this topic has come up at this time. The reality is that the local coastal plan update is a major project in terms of staff time and financial resources. From the planning team's standpoint, we have to complete the Ukiah Valley Area Plan and associated EIR and the General Plan Update and associated EIR prior to initiating any other major projects. So this is certainly in preparation for a local coastal plan update and what that might look like, but we're not in a position to begin actual work on it until we've cleared at least one major project off of our plate. Our projection at this point in time is that the local coastal plan update would take, around 4 years. It would take at least that amount of time just to do the public process and the staff and consultant work to get from kind of the beginning point to